Tony Gwynn was a lot of things. A 15-time All-Star, a Gold Glove fielder, and a Padres fan favorite. He was a Hall of Famer, beloved by his team, and the most iconic athlete in San Diego history. Before all that though, he was a hitter. In an era of record-setting power and steroid-fueled drama, Gwynn was more than happy to play the role of old-school contact guy. But that's underselling him. He's one of 13 left-handed hitters in the 3,000 hit club. He shares the record for most batting titles in NL history, and his lifetime average of .338 is still the highest in the last 60 years. Tony didn't look like your average superstar. He didn't sound like most professional athletes.
There are so many great managers.
You like the Boch, don't you?
I like Boch a lot.
Other than hand-eye coordination, he never said he had any special abilities. And yet, nobody was surprised when he entered Cooperstown on his first ballot. Tony Gwynn wasn't the very best ever, but it's often said that he was the quote-unquote purest hitter in the game. We'll unpack what exactly that means soon enough, but first, let's talk about Tony. What made Gwynn the smartest hitter of his era? How was he able to dominate MLB pitching for 20 years? The short answer involves years of work, new tech, and the help of another San Diego icon. The long answer is, well, you're about to get it. Tony Gwynn was a Pelican. Sorry, that's actually not true. Tony Gwynn was almost a Pelican. Gwynn was a multi-sport athlete growing up. He attended San Diego State on a basketball scholarship and didn't even play baseball his first year. In fact, he almost never played at all past high school. Tony juggled baseball and basketball growing up, but it wasn't always easy. By high school, he decided to quit baseball altogether and told his mom.
And my mom looked me right in the eye and she said, Tony, if I were you, I would play baseball because you never know. You never know.
Following his mother's advice, not only did Gwynn break multiple basketball records in college, but he was an All-American in baseball. He said the time he spent dribbling a basketball gave him better wrist control while hitting.
But, we just go out and play hard every game and try to win.
On the morning of June 9th, 1981, Tony Gwynn was selected 58th overall by the San Diego Padres. An hour later, he was picked in the NBA draft by the Clippers, who were also located in San Diego at the time. Once again, Tony had to choose between baseball or basketball. On appearances alone, most people wouldn't have taken him for an NBA recruit. He was 5'11" and weighed 175 pounds, at a time when basketball players were trending bigger than ever. He also dribbled left-handed, which was rare for the league. Gwynn chose the Padres, signing a deal for $25,000. He joined the big league roster in 1982, where he'd stay for the next 20 years.
You know what's fun? Baseball. You know what isn't fun? Not baseball. Let's say you're a Mets fan in New York, or an Angels fan in LA, or you're in Iowa for some reason. Due to regional blackouts, the only way to watch your local team is often an expensive cable package. And if you don't have one of those, that's a lot of not baseball. And that's where NordVPN comes in. With NordVPN, you can change your virtual location with just one click and watch your favorite team from anywhere, even Iowa. Nord is also more than just a VPN. It's your shield against the dark web. And now Nord has a deal just for my viewers. That's you guys. Go to nordvpn.com/baseballhistorianvpn and receive 4 months for free on top of their 2-year plan. It's risk-free too. If you don't like it in 30 days, you'll get your money back. That's nordvpn.com/baseballhistorianvpn. Now, back to the video.
1982 was pretty mediocre for San Diego. They finished at 500, ranked 14th in attendance, and sported exactly one All-Star in center fielder Rupert Jones. As far as the Padres were concerned though, mediocre was great. They had entered the season with one of the youngest lineups in Major League Baseball, and most preseason predictions had put them in last place. Gwynn played 54 games, spending time at all 3 outfield spots. He picked up his first MLB hit with a double against the Phillies, and posted a strong slash line for the year. He played his first full season in 1984, and just so happened to lead all of baseball in hits and batting average. He was an All-Star, and his team finished atop the NL West. The World Series may have ended in disappointment, but Padre fans would never forget who took them to their first Fall Classic. By the time the 80s ended, Tony Gwynn was a bona fide superstar. He'd put up 1,300 hits in 8 seasons, and averaged 200 hits per 162 games. His batting average was the highest of the decade in the National League. His best year up to this point was 87. 1987 was a bit of an outlier for baseball as a whole. home run rates spiked, with many speculating that the ball had been juiced by the league. In this high offense environment, even Tony Gwynn went on a home run tear, with 7. The MVP was Andre Dawson, who hit 49 homers for the last place Cubs. It was a tight race though, with other strong contenders like Ozzie Smith and Jack Clark. So much so, in fact, that Gwynn finished a distant 8th in the voting. The numbers, however, tell a different story. While others led the league in long balls, Tony grabbed a few records of his own. He led MLB in hits with 218, breaking the Padres record set by himself 3 years earlier. His batting average of .370 was the highest in the league by far, and the best for an NL player since Stan Musial in 1948. Of course, a high batting average does not an MVP make, so let's look at some other stats. Gwynn had an OPS plus of 158, beating out Dawson's 130. He also stole 56 bases on 68 attempts, good for an 82% success rate. His 8.6 wins above replacement led the NL by a healthy margin, and remains the Padres' single-season record to this day. And while it was still the 80s, hitting .370 is a pretty big deal for any era. So should Tony Gwynn have won the NL MVP in 1987? My answer is yes. Gwynn was already a potential Hall of Famer at this point. The fans knew it, his teammates knew it, and opposing pitchers definitely knew it. What none of them could have predicted, however, was that he was about to get even better. The 80s were a wild time for baseball. Between the '81 strike, the Pittsburgh drug trials, and the lifetime ban of its all-time hits leader, MLB had more than enough controversy on its hands. Throughout this turbulence, though, Tony Gwynn remained consistent. The key to his consistency laid in his work ethic. Gwynn absorbed baseball knowledge, like a sponge, or maybe Kirby. A student of the game, he read charts, analyzed at-bats, and kept color-coded notes on opposing pitchers. During a slump early in his career, Tony called his wife Alicia after a game. He asked her to tape the next Padres game on their home VCR so he could rewatch his at-bats later on. By the end of his playing days, Gwynn spent over $100,000 on video equipment. He was a pioneer of the practice, logging hours in Jack Murphy Stadium's video room. They called him Captain Video.
Oh, he got it up. I know sometimes people look at me slide or something and say, God, what's wrong with that guy? He didn't smile or anything, but to me, this is business.
It was in 1992 that Tony Gwynn encountered a true legend. It was at the All-Star game in San Diego, and Ted Williams had just entered the NL dugout. Then 73, Williams wanted one thing: to meet the best ball player his hometown had seen since, well, himself. In many ways, Tony and Ted were complete opposites. Tony was lighthearted and outgoing, while Ted could be less so. While Tony was a media darling, Ted was usually at odds with members of the press. But they also had a lot in common. Williams was born in San Diego, and even played for the minor league Padres for a time. When Gwynn retired, he would do so with the highest career batting average since Williams' .344.
Ted Williams' book was the first book that I ever read, The Science of Hitting. I was very interested in the little baseball picture, the little baseball box.
I can still see it.
On the back of the magazine. And
They immediately hit it off, so to speak.
And the first time I met him, I had a bat in my hand, and I said, "Hello, Mr. Williams, how are you?" And he says, "Hey, Tony, how you doing? Let me see your bat." And I handed him my bat, and he started to pick his teeth with it.
Ted then gave Tony some advice. Start pulling the ball for power. History is made on the inside pitch, he told Gwynn. Tony replied that he could already handle the ball in. Ted just laughed. Tony got off to his best start yet in 1994. His average was .383 at the All-Star break, and over .390 by August. On August 11th, he was rolling along at .394 with a third of the season left to reach the coveted .400 mark. And then, on August 12th, the baseball world ground to a halt. With no collective bargaining agreement and the owners withholding pension funds, the players went through with their threat to strike. They walked off the job, and the season was officially canceled a month later. But what if the season hadn't stopped? Following the All-Star game, Gwynn was hitting .423. Who's to say that he couldn't have continued at that rate for another month and a half? Certainly not me. When baseball returned in 1995, he went 2 for 4, 2 for 4, and 2 for 3 in his first 3 games. As a result, Gwynn's average over his previous 162 games, going all the way back to July 10th, 1993, had risen to .401. He had hit .400 over a full season. It's equivalent. Is it a technicality? Sure. But for me, it's a testament to Gwynn's consistency, and maybe the closest we'll get to a true 400 season ever again. But let's move on from what could have been, especially when Tony Gwynn's actual accomplishments are already unbelievable enough. 1994 gave him his 5th batting title. He picked up a 6th the next year, while his 7th in 96 matched him with Stan Musial. He got his 8th and final title in 1997 when he hit .372. This tied the NL record set by Honus Wagner, and made Gwynn one of just 5 players ever to win 4 consecutive times. Even during this otherworldly run, Tony stayed in contact with Ted Williams.
The most important thing about hitting is getting a good ball to hit. Rogers Hornsby told me that. What does it mean to you, Tony?
Me getting a good ball to hit means it's a pitch that I can handle, I can put a good swing on it, and I have any doubt in my mind that when I start to pull a bat through the zone, this ball that I'm going to hit hard.
The two regularly discussed hitting, with Williams constantly telling Gwynn to be more aggressive and to use a bigger bat. In 1997, Tony finally took Ted's advice. He switched to a heavier, longer bat and started turning on the inside pitch. By the All-Star game, he'd hit 13 homers, and pitchers were no longer busting him inside. His home run rate more than doubled over the next 3 seasons. The 1999 All-Star game was played at Fenway Park in Boston. During the pre-game ceremonies, Ted Williams, now 80 years old and only able to walk for short distances, was brought onto the field via a cart. He was immediately swarmed by players from both teams, and fans gave him a several-minute standing ovation. But when it came time for him to throw out the first pitch, it was Tony Gwynn who helped him do it.
Ted Williams will throw out tonight's ceremonial first pitch with help from Tony Gwynn.
If Gwynn was the smartest hitter of his time, Greg Maddux was the smartest pitcher. Maddux believed that it was physically impossible for someone to measure the speed of a pitch with their bare eye. Except, he said, for that f***ing Tony Gwynn. Gwynn and Maddux faced each other 107 times. Of those 107, 50 of them ended with Tony on base. Not once did he strike out. I said before that Tony Gwynn was a pure hitter. This is a term that I've seen used a lot to describe a number of players. It's also one that nobody ever seems to define. You'll see it applied to high average players like Gwynn, Carew, and Boggs. On the flip side, you rarely see Henry Aaron described in this way, despite him being a career .305 hitter. A pure hitter, in most contexts, is someone who hits for average, doesn't hit for power, and doesn't strike out. In 2023, that would be someone like Luis Arias or Nico Horner for the Cubs. Honestly, it feels like pure hitter is just a fancy way for people to say contact hitter. That's just what I think, though. Let me know what you think a pure hitter is in the comments. Still, calling Tony Gwynn a contact hitter is like calling Nirvana a garage band, or Joey Chestnut a hot dog enthusiast. It took Gwynn 6 seasons to get his first 1,000 hits. It then took him another 6 to get to 2,000. He got his 3,000th career hit exactly 6 years after that, on his mother's birthday.
When I turn around, and there's my mom, and I said, "Happy birthday."
Gwynn hit .343 at home and .334 on the road. He hit .345 against righties and .325 against lefties. In his 2 World Series, he hit .371. Gwynn's competition only got stronger as time went on, literally. Yet, the only thing really able to stop him was his own body. He retired in 2001 after tearing his meniscus. He was 41, and he'd had 10 knee surgeries in 11 years, making his late career run of excellence all the more amazing. He became eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2007. It didn't take long for them to come calling.
It rings. And for the first time that morning, I thought, I might make the Hall of Fame. This is Tony.
Tony, I'm calling to tell you that the baseball writers have elected you to the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Tony, are you still with me? I'll give you a minute if you need it.
I'm going to take this
All
from
you
you.
have to say is thank God for...
No kidding.
The San Diego State baseball team plays at Tony Gwynn Stadium. The Padres retired his number in 2004, and the National League batting title was named after him in 2016. Petco Park, where the Padres play, is found at 19 Tony Gwynn Drive. Tony Gwynn was a student, a teacher, and a hitter. But he was also a son, and a father, and a human.
From Seattle, good evening. No, it's not a good evening, it's a sad evening. Tony Gwynn is gone. He died early this morning, Mr. Padre, number 19, a humble hero.
He stuck with us. He could have gone anywhere. Anybody would have taken him. Anybody would have taken him. He would have probably had a ring. But he chose his adopted family, like he referred to us, the San Diegans.
So we will cry together. We will laugh together. We will have joy together today. But one thing we will never, never do is to forget the greatest hitter of his generation and one of the greatest people in the history of Major League sport.
Tony, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd probably be remembered as a hitter, as a guy with a bat in my hand. But more than that, I just want people to respect what I've been able to do, how I've been able to go about doing it.